Hello, Internet, and welcome to A Critically Accursed Podcast. This is your host and primary editor, Mr. Critically Accursed, aka Chris, and I'm here today to let you know that with the conclusion of Horizon Volume 1, A Critically Accursed Podcast is taking a break from our release schedule. We anticipate going radio silence for about a month, maybe more, before punching you in your ear holes with Horizon Volume 2. With our first season of podcasting done, it's time for us to reflect on our podcast as a whole, and to redefine how we're moving forward. Surprising absolutely no one, the tabletop RPG podcast scene isn't something that I would expect any significant by-the-numbers success from. For myself, and I imagine many other creators, recording tabletop games and molding them into coherent stories for others to listen to is more of a passion project than anything. All Raid Shadow Legends jokes aside, I think it's rare for anyone to approach this form of content creation with realistic hopes of being a blockbuster podcast success story. It's not about money, influence, or popularity, but it is about community. For me, tabletop podcasts are about sharing stories being told at your gaming table with people that have a real passion and love for the hobby, as well as with people who may not really have the opportunity to game with others. But, Mr. Critically Accursed, you're saying right now, I'm sure, this sounds right up your alley. You love storytelling and tabletop stuff. Why are you taking a break? Game forever. Well, friendo, for me, it boils down to time management. While creating this podcast is incredibly fulfilling, as any other podcast creator can tell you, it's also an incredible time sink. A bit of background, we pre-recorded all of Volume 1 before we even released issue number 1, and I anticipated being able to continue editing content on a weekly basis so that when we would release an issue, we'd have a new one locked and loaded in our backlog. This, while possible, also meant that I was basically doing nothing except living my day-to-day and editing. And when life emergencies threw my schedule out of balance, I lost grasp of this editing schedule and had no reasonable way of catching up again. What I've learned from this, for all you crazy people who are interested in podcasting, is that if you're a project's sole editor and you sink any reasonable amount of time into cleaning up your podcast audio, do yourself a favor and just release every 2 weeks. While I think this does hurt the potential growth rate of a podcast, it's a significantly easier task to handle than trying to cram so much editing into such a small period of time. Even more so if you're not only the editor, but also take lead on social media promotion and advertising. I say this often, but the most successful, quote-unquote, podcasts I've found typically involve the entire cast having their hands in the production and promotion of the podcast. In that way, the gaming table itself becomes the brand, and the workload is shared. If you want to start a podcast like this, find people who are equally as interested in working on the podcast as you are. Share the workload and ride that train straight to the moon. As this relates to A Critically Accursed Podcast, I'm using this time off to refocus and reallocate my time. I'd love to do more with the community that we've built with Horizon so far, but I need the time to organize it. I'm working with the podcast crew to share at least some of the podcast responsibilities where possible to help me, honestly, avoid burnout. Also, in real life, I'm currently in the process of buying a house, so there's kind of a lot of moving pieces going on right now that I need to organize. So how can you help? If you're listening right now, good on you, A+. Thank you for giving not only our podcast your attention, but also for caring enough to listen to me talk bullshit for however long this has been. If you like our podcast and want to hear more, please show us your support. I said before that our podcast isn't a numbers game. It's not about popularity to me, but it is about reach. There might be tons of people out there that can relate to and enjoy our contents, but they won't ever hear about us unless our reach and our community grows. To this extent, please tell your friends that you're listening to this super cool podcast about teenage superheroes in the future. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps incredibly in terms of making our podcast visible. Retweet and interact with us on Twitter. I promise I won't bite. Join our Discord and hang out. The scariest part of our Discord is Seth, and he's relatively fine most of the time. The more we know people care about our podcast, the easier it will be for us to overcome those terrible moments when running the podcast doesn't feel worthwhile anymore. This may be a passion project, but the real passion is and always has been storytelling. And every story needs an audience. Help us find ours. I'll talk to you guys again in a few weeks. Until then, join the Discord. We watch movies and anime and we talk about gaming stuff all the time, so just do it. Just scroll down, join our Discord. I really want to see people join the Discord because I want to hang out with you guys, so do it. Take care.